Hello viewer, Eric the Car Guy here, also known as ETCG1 on this here channel. How are you? I hope well. Today I was driving to the shop and on the radio there was a discussion about cars that drive themselves. And basically this possibly being the future of motoring. Apparently Google has invested a great deal of money into a program that is kind of also a DARPA, which is the Defense Initiative, Defense something. Anyway, the people that do like the secret kind of high-end projects for the Defense Department for the US, and they have projects like this. In fact, they had said that some time ago they had started an initiative about a challenge that they had put to their engineers and said, make us cars that drive themselves over rough terrain, things like that. They were looking for autonomous vehicles for military use, and they were also looking for commercial applications. So in essence what they're trying to do is make vehicles that you could jump in, push the button, turn the key, whatever, and it would drive you from point A to point B, and you basically set your destination and it will take you where you want to go. And I just thought I'd throw out a couple of opinions and a little bit of my experience with systems similar to this. I haven't had any direct experience with anything as far as something that drove itself. However, I have had some experience with the collision mitigation systems on some vehicles, in particular Acuras. And I know a little bit about how it works. As far as the collision mitigation systems, and this is something that I think started out, like I think Mercedes started out with something like this, some kind of system. But what it does, if you look at some of those newer Acura RLs, like 2006 I think is when they introduced it. If you look at the emblem in the front, the little Acura A thing, if it looks like it's some kind of plastic, you know, flat piece as opposed to just like the regular chrome A, that is one of the sensors, actually it's radar, that shoots out all the time and basically judges to see if there's anything in front of the vehicle. And if you're driving at speed and you get too close to something, or you're about to get too close to something, there's a couple of different parts to the strategy. The first step is it starts shaking your seatbelt. So it starts to, there's a motorized system inside the seatbelt itself that when the vehicle detects that you're getting a little too close to another vehicle, it will start shaking your seatbelt, be like, wake up. And then if you get really too close and you continue, it will actually apply the brakes for you to back you off. This goes along with an adaptive cruise control setup with this vehicle also, to where it uses this same system to maintain a speed in traffic. So traditionally you turn the cruise control on and you're driving down the highway and you're encountering some slower moving traffic. You basically have to disengage the cruise control and drive with the traffic until you reach another open area and then re-engage the cruise control and go on. Well, not so with these systems. What they actually have is the ability to sense when there's other vehicles that are slower than you in front of you and slow your vehicle down to accommodate their speed. It's a neat little system, and it's honestly not that sophisticated. It may seem sophisticated, but really in the days of electronics now, all you've really got to do is be able to manufacture and program a control unit, and you can do just about anything. I mean, pretty much the whole vehicle's electronic as it is. For instance, traction control. Traction control is really an extension of ABS. ABS has been around for some time. Also started out, I believe, with Mercedes. So we started out with analog braking systems way back in, I think it was the early 90s. On some high-end Mercedes, maybe the S-Class or something like that. They usually have like those really expensive cutting-edge kind of things in those high-end cars. But eventually it trickled down, and really all ABS is a bunch of wheel speed sensors on each one of your wheels, and it detects if the speed on one wheel suddenly stops or slows down more than the rest. So that's in essence how ABS works. I should make a video at some point about, you know, the specifics of it, but basically what it does is it's taking speed readings at each of the four corners, and if one of those wheels should slow down more than the rest, the ABS becomes active and it basically modulates the pressure going out to the wheels so that you're not slamming on the brakes and skidding down the road. It's most of it's there to help you maintain directional control. There's some argument on whether or not this actually makes it so that you stop sooner. I was of the opinion for some time that ABS was actually going to increase your stopping distance because the brakes were not being applied at a steady force all the time. But studies have shown that actually ABS decreases stopping distance. But I find myself getting off topic here. The point I was trying to make about ABS and the fact that it was easy to integrate traction control into that system is traction control is kind of the opposite. So instead of during braking, it's monitoring wheel speed. It's monitoring wheel speed all the time, but in this instance, if it's trying to maintain traction control will actually apply the brakes to help slow a spinning wheel down or send power to the other side. Differential action, once again, another video. Okay, so in addition to it applying the brakes, the traction control system oftentimes has control of the throttle as well, or a mechanism in front of the throttle. These days with electronic throttle control that aren't controlled by a cable, it's much easier to incorporate the electronics, once again, to also back the throttle off. So if you're too far into the throttle and you're starting to lose traction, the computer kicks in and it basically throttles the engine back, applies some brakes, and you get traction control. So in a way, this is, in a sense, part of this car driving itself kind of philosophy. And as I said, it's not that difficult to add these other electronics into the system to give these things that ability. So what's the next step? We can apply the brakes electronically, we can work the throttle electronically, and we have a system in place to basically detect other vehicles on the road so that we can slow down in the event that we're getting too close or it looks like there's possibly going to be a collision. There's electric power steering that's come out, so that means that you also have electronic control of the steering, so it's not that much of a stretch to hook in a control unit and some actuators, and well, actually you wouldn't even have to have any actuators because they're already there. They're already electronics motors built into those electric power steering systems. You take all these things and put them together and it's not that difficult to make a car drive itself. Is this a good thing or a bad thing, I suppose, is the question, and that was part of what was being discussed in this program. It is something that I believe is possible, and I believe it's possible in the not too distant future, like I said, based on what already exists with the current technology in the vehicle. However, the hard part comes in that the computer can't think. The computer can turn things on and off very good and react to situations based on sensor inputs much faster than we can as humans, especially if we're, like, say, a little bit tired. Maybe we've had a little too much to drink or some other issue or whatever that makes it so that our driving is somewhat impaired. Computer's always on. I mean, no matter what. It's 4 o'clock in the morning, you've been out drinking all night. The car is ready to go. It doesn't care that it's 4 in the morning. And to me, I'm saying, you know, that would be a good thing. Not that I do that often, but just in the sense to where it would cut down on a lot of instances where there might be a questionable person behind the wheel. And I'm not just talking about being impaired either through alcohol or drugs or something like that. You could just be tired. Fatigue is a huge player in all this. So yeah, if you've been driving for a long period of time, fatigue can set in, and that can be just as dangerous as drinking or being drunk and driving. The end result is basically the same, is that you are impaired. So a vehicle that drives itself, I would say yes, there is a market to some degree. But the technology to get that thing to negotiate traffic, to negotiate all the different things that we as humans interpret and input and then drive with the car, that's going to be a little bit more tricky because there's a whole lot of variables. I mean, like I said, computers can do and react really fast to sensor inputs, but they can't think like people can think. Pretty much somebody has to think and then program that thinking into the computer. So maybe it's Skynet. I don't know. But I just think it's interesting because, like I said, there's a lot of existing technology now that is not that far off from a vehicle being able to drive itself. Like I said, collision mitigation, ABS in a sense was where I would say that it started, and also traction control stemming from that, and now collision mitigation, and also adaptive or active cruise control systems we're kind of on the threshold as it is. But you know, there's that next technological leap as far as the processing power in order to get that vehicle to quote-unquote drive itself. It's a little bit tricky. But I think it's an interesting prospect, and I kind of am putting this video out and putting this question to you. What do you think about vehicles that drive themselves? Or what would you, would you have one? And it's something that I actually wondered about all this. So say you make vehicles that can drive themselves. I wonder if there would be adaptive systems to where you could retrofit older vehicles to have these systems. So you wouldn't have to spend like all that money on a vehicle that could drive itself. I wonder what would come into play there. Also, something they mentioned as far as insurance goes was something that comes into play. If there's an accident, or would it reduce your insurance rate to have a vehicle that could drive itself? And lastly, another thing that was brought up is, could it be hacked? In other words, could there be somebody out there that could hack into a network that was basically driving all the cars, that basically decided to make them all crash or drive off a cliff or something of that nature? And that's the other thing I forgot to mention as far as the existing technology that we have that's all tied in. Satellite navigation. I mean, it's not that difficult to tie all that stuff in. In fact, they can tell you exactly how fast you're going. Speed is distance over time. So if you're using your sat nav, and I think some rental car companies have used this technology, if you're speeding, they can tell. They can tell it's right there. Speed is distance over time. So if they're looking at you from space and they see that you traveled from this point to this point in this amount of time, they know exactly how fast you're going. Exactly how fast you're going. There's no need for radar guns, anything like that. I mean, they got you. So that adds a whole other element as far as all this goes. But if all the cars were driving themselves, or the majority of them were driving themselves, would you even have to concern yourself with speeding? Distracted drivers, people texting, that kind of thing. Also, it would help alleviate a lot. You could be driving down the road and doing your email, or something, watching TV, doing something else besides focusing on the road. You would just be transported from one place to another. And then this brings in the whole argument, is personal transportation really necessary at this point, since you're being driven everywhere anyway? So there's a whole bunch of stuff that you could throw back at me on this one, and I'm curious as to how you feel about it and what you think about cars that drive themselves. Love to hear about it down in the comments. Don't worry, I don't respond to them directly, but I do read them. And then possibly we'll have another video discussion on this same topic. So I'll see you in a bit. Anyway, I am Eric the Car Guy, also known as ETCG1 here on this channel, hopefully inspiring some sort of thoughtful discourse on this topic of cars that drive themselves. Google+, Facebook, Twitter, and always at ericthecarguy.com you can find me. And here at ETCG1, I try to post videos every Wednesday. So you can find me back here next week at Wednesday. So anyway, I will see you later. So be safe, have fun, stay dirty. Catch you next time.